Hey everybody, it's a Mad Master here. I'm just doing this video, and this is kind of just a video to kind of give hope to people, or I don't know if it's good to give hope or just kind of clear the air as far as all this stuff that's been going on the last 5-6 years in the Western world, especially, and just to kind of give my statement upon what I think will and can happen with regards to everything that's going on, in regards to a specific subject, and that is gender, sexuality, and all that stuff. As far as what do I mean by that? I mean, like, well, there's the Me Too thing, and that scared men from. And I could speak for myself, and I can't speak for anybody else necessarily that I know. Actually, I do. Well, no, I can. There's a few people that I knew like this. Just the idea that this would limit our options and make us more hesitant to try to attract the women that we want. That's the first thing, and then the second thing is all the confusing kind of gender landscape that's going on with all these different definitions and labels and so forth. And I just wanted to say, like, in regards to like what science is and what science can be, we can still. I was watching this video the other day, and it was talking about how men are attracted to butts. Basically, that's what it said in the video, and then it went into all this evolutionary psychology and biology, and I'm like, well, if you look at the animal kingdom very much has a lot of these aspects of sexuality that have been kind of announced in the human species as truisms. But then you have this confusion with what's socially constructed, and people saying it's all bullshit and all this stuff. Like feminists and woke social justice warriors trying to be basically unscientific. And I'm just going to say, there are a lot of different people doing different things nowadays. But what we should not worry about these things too much, because unless there is a biochemical thing that they're doing, the elites or the powers that be, in my opinion, there might be some influence by the environment on some of these things that are happening to people. And just to clear the air, transgenderism has been going on for eons. You had hermaphrodites, and that's a little different, but that's very different. But I'm just saying, like, you've had these types of things, these gender ambiguity in culture, primitive cultures. There's all sorts of stuff happening now. That is an aspect of society that's there now, and that as far as what I think is, I accept it as long as that's not the prevailing zeitgeist, is that you have to be pansexual and gender fluid and all that stuff. If you can be cisgendered and live in our modern society and have cisgendered women, heterosexual or bisexual in my case a lot of the time, but with these women, which is actually pretty good. It's actually pretty cool, because hopefully in the future more often too. But anyways, because stuff that could happen maybe. Anyways, enough about stupid for me to blather on about that. But anyways, you have these scientific laws and rules that have been, these scientific theories about how men and women operate. It's hetero cisgendered women and men, and there shouldn't be anything, if you believe the science, trust the science. If you believe in science, there should be an element of trust there with regards to, like, I know that it's been a worry, like, what's going to happen in general. Like, are people, what I'm trying to say is, like, are people naturally going to do things that are normal given the millennia that we've lived? Now, if you look at reproduction strategies of animals, you can kind of answer the own question. Humans are animals. Are they, if you want to pursue certain lifestyles, or become an alpha male, whatever that means. Of course, that's a very dubious term. Now, if you want to become this type of person, and you think that, oh well, society will influence women not to be attracted to alphas anymore, and all these stupid ideas, you're in for a shock. Because, for one, as I've read a lot about attraction and stuff, like I can give countless examples of, like, I'm a very problematic dude. I'm not going to say it's countless. Obviously, I can count how many girlfriends I've had, but I've dated several feminists, and they know that I'm into some weird shit. I have some weird opinions about things. And they didn't immediately dump me or leave my apartment upon knowing that I have some of these ideas or these thoughts. So just to say that right there clears the air upon that subject. Now, another thing that I would say is that, well, all the stuff from the seduction community, and dating from the advent of like, I'd say the 50s/60s forward, with sexual revolution and all these ideas, combined with the ideas of how science has gone into looking into these subjects, as well as the sciences being approached with, so to speak, the approach of the seduction community / PUA movement. You mix them all together, and they have several conclusions that they've made. Now, do the new gender dynamics and wokeism? That's the question I'm kind of posing and kind of answering in this video. Do those ideas contradict those older ideas, or do they destroy them, or will you not be able to do the normal things you were supposed to be able to do with regards to these new dynamics? I'd say fuck no. And if you believe that this science is real, especially not, because, for one, I'm going to say this, like, this is going to sound controversial. I knew this girl, and I'm not trying to say that this was like necessarily because she's not gay or not, it was just a phase. I'm going to say this, though. This is a very interesting story, because she definitely wasn't gay. She was definitely bi, or, but she definitely wasn't sure. And she thought for a while she was asexual in her mid-20s. I had a date with her. It went very well, but she was very socially awkward, like worse than I am sometimes. And she flirted with me drunk at a club too later that week, and then I was just kind of, I don't know, I don't remember. It was a weird. There was weird encounters with her. So, and just the way that she acted, it's like she wasn't sure of gender and sex and all this stuff she told me, and all these things that she said. But come to find out, years later, she's married, normal relationship, with a man with kids. And I'm just like, well, you talk about like this Generation Z, and you can look at this thing. I'm not saying that all of them are going to switch over to be like normal trad people or whatever, but I'm just saying that sometimes things are a phase. Sometimes some of these labels are a phase. There's just some type of rebellion that the younger generation is doing, and they're not going to necessarily follow that path or those guidelines. I mean, I think my ex called herself, did she call herself a different gender? I don't remember. I don't think she did necessarily, but it's like if you meet someone and they're like 100% feminine woman, biologically and mentally, and they call themselves some kind of fucking label, gender fluid or something. It's like, okay, let them have their way saying that shit, whatever. But they're really a woman, I'm not trying to be a dick here, but I just believe that's the case. And it's just like they want to identify with this. Maybe there's like these small elements that they want to add together into their gender identity. Who gives a fuck? That's my whole point of this video. It's like, oh well, you shouldn't try to get, you shouldn't try to like approach women when all these bad things are happening with Me Too and allegations and false allegations. Like, I'm sure there's incels that believe this, or what's it like in the dating landscape nowadays with all these different genders and all this shit. I mean, yesterday, I went to this fair, and there were a lot of definitively androgynous looking women that looked like men, and I knew they were probably trans or fluid or whatever. But there were a lot of women. There were obviously women. I mean, you could just, I'm not trying to say that I could always tell. There's ones that pass really well. But 9 times out of 10, if you see someone that has a fucking, Adam's apple, and they just have this gait to them, and that's their right to do what they want. And that they're not going to fucking have a big giant sausage in between their legs. I'll just say that. Or how did Andrew Dice Clay's like, hey, you got this big sausage. I don't remember Andrew Dice Clay's joke about it, but it was pretty terrible, but pretty funny. So that's my whole point, is like, if you're attracted to something and you see, you have a sense and intuition, you have to be severely autistic and clueless, and that's nothing wrong with that, to not be able to go out there and say, oh, that's definitely a woman. A lot of the time it's not definitely, and probably a cisgender woman. It's just the vibe that you get. And I'm not saying it always is the case, or always 100% of the time. I gotta stop playing with this thing. But anyways, I'm just like, because the thing fell off. So you can't really like justify being black-pilled or being like totally lost in this situation. It's almost like a video for myself too. It's like, I'm not black-pilled, and I'm pretty hopeful actually, but I'm just saying that people that are out there, they're probably like scared of these things. I'm sure, because I've been weirded out by it myself at times. You're swiping through and you have all these fucking labels and all these genders and all these different things. You don't even know what they're talking about some of the time. Like demisexual, I had to look that up. Demi Moore, they're really attracted to Demi Moore. I don't know, or Demi Lovato. It's like all these labels and all these terms and shit. It's like the whole thing is like, are they going to do that at 30, at 40 necessarily? Yeah, sure. Some of them are actually into that for real, and it takes a lot. There's a lot of controversy about the surgery thing with trans, and it's like, I would think that there is a fail-safe with a lot of that. Maybe not always. Obviously, there's some weird fucking people out there. Weird families, weird parents are like trying to raise their daughter as a guy or vice versa, because they one day found them with Tonka trucks, or like Barbie dolls or whatever, and they're just like, oh, they're trans. I know they are. And they could just be a tomboy or tomgirl, I'm sure there's families out there like Bill Maher talked about, like probably in California. But I'd say 9 times out of 10, these people are actually, these teenagers that want to transition probably are really trans. They probably, they could convince themselves that they are, or they really are. I think they really are. They probably really are. It's probably not a phase. Now, there are those cases where there's something weird going on with that. I will admit there is some weird stuff out there. There's no denying it, and that doesn't make me a bigot to question that. And I don't want to, go into the age that it should be or anything. I have a lot of controversial opinions about age anyways, but but yeah. I don't believe that this whole thing's like going to affect my dating life, that going out there, like, because I know from experience that it hasn't. And I think what I'm trying to say is, like, people are naturally going to gravitate with what their biology guides them to some extent, regardless of all these labels and all these things. And that's what I'm trying to say in this video. Controversial statement. I just think not everything is socially constructed. So if they say, well, it's socially constructed, I'm not going to do that, and then they end up doing it, is my whole point. It's like, of course they're going to contradict themselves and make them seem like hypocrites. like the feminists that date alpha males, like the girl that's like, basically like totally woke and she's banging some dude who's a neo-Nazi, or something like that. I mean, that, well, okay, that's not, never mind, I shouldn't talk about that. Or, they might have some like right-wing boyfriend or some kind of like weird boyfriend with weird beliefs, and about it, and it's just like weird, it's like they have some kind of weird edgy beliefs, and they're a total feminist and all this stuff, but they're attracted to the dude. Attraction is not a choice, like David D'Angelo said. So I mean, some of those things still hold true even with all this changing landscape and weird, nebulous, bizarre, confusing situation that we're in. That's my whole point of this video. It's like, we don't know what path these people will take that are into all this shit, all this weird shit. I'm gonna say it's weird because it's weird to me. I don't know what all these like. I mean, I get the trans thing, but I just don't get everything else that's like come along with it. A lot of the time, I don't really care to either. Like, I don't care to understand, because I do not believe some of it's science. I think sometimes a person is just a lesbian who wants to be like a man. So if they want to call themselves, but they don't want to be totally a man, So if they want to call themselves queer or, fluid or whatever, that's their choice. But they're probably just a lesbian, basically, at the end of the day. Or they're probably just gay at the end of the day from the other side. Who gives a shit? Your gender expression is your gender expression. You don't have to make a whole identity for every little thing that you are in life, If I did that, I'd go crazy. I'd have to say, like, I'm a metalhead, blah, 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 blah. I've done videos about this before. But yeah, I'd say do not worry about this shit. Like, the true black pill, incel, somewhat MGTOW too, is like, Western women are crazy because of woke feminism, and they won't have sex with me. I know they won't. So I'm gonna have to get like either like a wife from the Far East, like a mail order bride, or be celibate. It's like, well, tell that to me, I'm as problematic as it gets with a lot of shit, I talk about, I swear and make dirty jokes, and I say a lot of weird shit. It's like, maybe, I mean, it's not all too often, but even if I can get laid, an incel can. Incels. Elliot Rodger looked better than me. He was actually pretty effeminate, which is ironic. But it's like half the incels out there look better than me. I see pictures of these so-called incels. I'm like, what the fuck, man? And I got laid, like, just like thinking about, I got laid in that situation. And it's like, this person is like, I don't know if there's any 40-year-old incels yet, but they're bound to be, and these people just think it's the end of the world and stuff. I was a virgin until I was basically my mid-20s, 24, and it's like, if I would have lost hope earlier on, I probably would have never been, I would still be a virgin probably, but like, you have to keep hope, you have to keep hope in these situations. But yeah, I think this whole thing, this whole landscape, just imagine this. So all these rules, these laws of nature, these theories that they've talked about with sexuality, with evolution, and so forth, even with all this weird shit, still holds true. You will see, if you believe in the science, let's just say you believe in this stuff, whether it be the manosphere stuff or evolutionary psychology, Matt Ridley, Richard Dawkins, who else is there? I have some books, Steven Pinker, whoever you're talking about. If you actually believe it actually has credence, then that there will be a place for that stuff in this world, in this new world we're in. Not everybody's going to be gender fluid, pansexual, whatever. They're not going to be like that. It's just not the case. So that's the whole point, is that you're going to see these dynamics play. And I think a lot of the people that are into some of this shit now, when they get older, they're not going to be necessarily. They're gonna. I mean, I'm not saying all of them, but a certain proportion of them, a certain portion of these people are gonna go. They're not gonna go straight because they'll still be bi or whatever, but they're gonna go more normal. You know that. I mean, I know that that's the case because that happens with a lot of people. I mean, even fucking like feminists from like the '60s. I know feminists were like screaming when Gloria Steinem got married and shit in the '70s or whatever. And, it's just like, it's kind of like yuppies in the '80s were former hippies. It's like they sold out, no doubt, and I like to attack them for selling out relentlessly, especially family members that sold out really bad, but which is kind of bad. But to say that, but it's like expecting this to be like it's a lack of faith in science, in naturalism, if you believe that everybody's just going to be like that feminism's going to brainwash women into not being attracted to you, for one, that they're going to all Me Too you, false accuse you, or they're just going to change their gender and like not want to be with you because you want to be with a cisgendered, hot whatever woman. It's like, first of all, I wouldn't necessarily say it's fringe at this point, but I'd say like most people still are like cisgendered heterosexual people. I know there's all these polls that are coming out. Millennials identify as this now, more 40% or whatever. It's like, I'm just saying, at the end of the day, like, I know one of my family member has a girlfriend. They're like Generation Z, and I'm pretty sure she identifies as all sorts of weird things and shit. But they have a normal heterosexual relationship. So you're gonna, all this rhetoric and all these labels, like, at the end of the day, it really doesn't fucking matter in a way. It's like they're gonna say what they are. Like my ex-girlfriend, like I could have sworn, I know she said she was pansexual. I don't think she identified as a different gender, but like, or maybe she did, and I don't remember. I can't even remember. I'd have to look like in the past, but like, there's, you'll 9 times out of 10 you're gonna meet women that say all this. This sounds sexist, but anybody of any gender are gonna say, of younger generations, are gonna say, I'm this, and this, and they're really a fucking man or really a fucking woman at the end of the day. And that's what's gonna happen with a lot of this shit. Not saying all, but a lot of it, because it is a trend. It is a trend to like label yourself all this shit. So, but if you have faith in the science that attraction is real, people are not attracted to fat people. It's no offense to me, not as much, at least. There's there's chubby chasers and stuff. I think there's also like female chubby chasers sometimes too. There's people, I mean, I think I am losing weight though, fortunately. But like there's rules that are there that have been around for our entire existence as a species that are going to they're not going to be erased in 20 years, within a 20-year period. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, all the rules aren't out the window because some groups of people call themselves all these different names and are saying all this shit about people and all this stuff. It's like, at the end of the day, like, people are still having sex in a normal way, like normal, quote unquote. They're still attracting their partners in a normal way. It's not like all these rules are out the window for everybody because some people choose to like not identify as a man or a woman, or feminism is making them think that everything's a social construct and all this shit. It's like, I've heard of all these situations where like a feminist will dump like a beta male guy for an alpha guy, quote unquote, or whatever you consider that nowadays. I've heard of all sorts of situations like this where the natural order is still in play. I don't think the natural order it's not as black and white as even the people from the scientific or other sides of the aisle or whatever will say. of course, that which gives credence to the other side, you know, but it's not like you're not gonna be ruined by these movements. I think it's just like more for myself. Like, I think I've been afraid of a lot of this stuff. Like, oh, what if I reach down there and there's a huge sausage, like I said earlier. I mean, I don't think it's gonna happen, but you know, it happened with someone I knew once. Like, someone I know someone I know that knows someone else. I'll just say that they're a relative of a friend. I'll just say it, which is the truth. Um, they were with someone and they thought they were a woman and it was a dude, but it's like it doesn't happen all that often. I don't think, because you can usually tell. People don't pass very well. You know, that's why the whole like trans bathroom thing is so weird, because it's like a homely woman that looks like a dude and they're a woman. They will get, you know, I mean, actually, I'm just trying to say the ones that do pass really well. Most people don't pass totally, but the ones who do really fucking pass, and it's like, to an extent, it's like really extreme. But you ever notice that how it's like these exaggerated gender ideas with people that transition and stuff? But anyways, who gives a shit? That's the whole point. It's like, live your life, go after what you want, you know, go after the people that you want. Sure, you're gonna get into a few arguments. Like, you know, it's a scary moment right now, you know, like with the politics and everything, how it is. It's like, what am I gonna say to a woman that says, oh, well, you don't vote, you're just part of the problem? I'm like, well, let's have a problem together, you know, in my bed right now, you know. I don't know. Let's examine that problem, you know, just change the subject. You know, you can do a lot of things. There's a lot of things you can do when someone wants to make everything political, and it's harder to date when everything is politicized nowadays, especially for the types of women that I like, which is ironic because I like a lot of women that are more just like with it, with stuff. I don't like the airheaded, you know, type. I like, you know, more intelligent, intellectual kind of women. Well, like, you know, and that's going to be a lot of liberals, unfortunately, or fortunately, you know, because like, I consider myself like old school leftist from the early 2000s. Like the ideals of the left from back then is what I identify with. So I don't identify with this new thing necessarily, except for like, I think that even back then, a lot of what feminism was saying with like, and social constructionism was still a factor. And I'm talking about more the anti-war left and like the anti-censorship left from back then, you know, the early 2000s, anti-globalization left, like all those three subjects. Like, I'm totally an old school left winger on that. But like with some of this new shit, I'm just like, no, I don't really get on board. Well, people will get over it, you know, eventually, and you know, and a lot of things are cyclical too. I mean, you have, I mean, there could be something that happens if you believe the fourth turning theories and stuff. You know, in the next few years, there could be some big crisis, and you know, people will go more conservative, and it'll be a kind of a stifling environment for people that are more libertine, like I am. But nevertheless, it's going to be, you know, people will be a little less like apt to be into that stuff. I mean, there's even smaller cycles that we can talk about, like, you know, I was listening to this podcast about where they were talking about Woodstock, was it Woodstock 99? And they were saying, oh my God, you know, like, I mean, they were actually like talking about the documentary about it, this other documentary that came out, or another podcast that came out about it. They were talking about that. And they were talking about how by the late 90s, all that stuff with like grunge and like the politically correct stuff in the 90s was kind of dying down. And you had, you know, I mean, I remember going to see Pantera in 2000. And I never thought I'd see boobs at a concert again, like, you know, women lifting their skirts up. But it became a thing again in the late 90s, early 2000s, like with nu metal and stuff. Like, just the whole like raunch culture and stuff. And it kind of culminated in the 2000s. Like, a lot of stuff was like, a lot of people were very more socially like libertarian at that point. Whereas like in the like early 90s, they were looking down upon a lot of that stuff as sexist, and you know, there was a lot of PC stuff going on in the early to mid 90s that were it was just kind of it was kind of one of those environments. Like that's when PC. I mean, PC is a very old term that comes from like Marxist movements and stuff, but like PC was a huge thing in the early '90s. Like there was a band that came out with a song called "Fuck PC." It was like this huge thing. You were supposed to say these things, these words, and even in middle school, I was taught about political correctness at the school I went to. Like this one year, I went to this politically correct private school, and there was a lot of wokeness even back then. And Camille Paglia came out with her books by the mid '90s, and there was like kind of a backlash that happened in that period of time with regards to all that stuff, and like eventually people just kind of settled down on that, and it just became like the cycle went the other way. And it was the same in the '70s too. I'm sure like at a certain point, like maybe the late '70s, it was kind of like the punk movement and stuff. It was like they were looking down upon a lot of that kind of stuff, and it just like new wave and a lot of those bands. They were still, well, maybe that's not true, because I read that book about the New York punk scene. It was kind of, wow, it's crazy. But yeah, it's one of those things that's cyclical. I mean, there is definitely cultural elements that are cyclical as well. So we can think about that to hope for some of the more maddening ideas and paradigms that are coming upon us, are weeded out in the future, because it's not weeded out, but just basically like diminished in the future, because it's like some of them are just very crazy and very weird and cringe, and that's what's happened. Now, I would say 2014 was the year that a lot of this stuff came to prominence. A lot of these woke ideas started to perpetuate, because you can see it on YouTube, and a lot of people bash YouTube. They bash like social media. Like this woman that I was debating Russia about, she's like, "Oh, I won't watch anybody on YouTube," because even though it was Meyer or whatever, the guy from University of Chicago talking about the Putin thing and stuff, and she's like, "Well, it's on YouTube." And it's like, people don't like YouTube, but YouTube has a huge cultural sway in our society, and you can tell the zeitgeist is changing when you're with a lot of YouTube stuff, because that's kind of like how to tell. So basically what happened early on YouTube is that there was a lot of like anti-creationist stuff from like these YouTube atheists, like Amazing Atheists, all these people. And then around 2013, but more 2014, was when the ball really got rolling, because of all these universities doing all this, like all these college students doing all this weird shit, saying all these weird things and trying to get people banned and all this stuff. That's when it really picked up. It was like 2014. And then when Trump got elected, it went over the top, of course. So it's a cyclical thing. So, maybe in the next 2 or 3 years, I'm not going to predict anything, but next 2 or 3 years, people are just going to be like so sick of the woke thing. And I'm already seeing this shift. There's articles about this. There people are talking about this whole shift. And, I don't support the military-industrial complex, but Top Gun being a hit, and I've debated this with people, but that's a big sign of the shift happening. As racially weird as this might get, I'd say like The Northman being kind of a hit too was kind of a shift, because it really wouldn't matter to me if it was all white or not. It was mainly white people in the movie, which obviously, if it's historically accurate, that's one thing. I don't know. There's a lot of articles that say, "Oh, it's not historically accurate because there was there were a few people from Africa in Norway at that time." It's like, shut the fuck up. Anyways, it doesn't matter to me if something, if something's historically accurate, it is or it isn't. And they could have like focused on this obscure like person from obscure like minuscule number of people that, I'm not saying this is the case, but minuscule number of traders that could have been from Africa, and film the scene just to have diversity. Okay, fuck you. Okay, you're focusing on this story about this guy and he's white, whatever. But The Northman being an unwoke movie is even more of an element to me, because it's like there was no political message. Of course, there was like a little bit of feminism with the Valkyrie woman. I'm not giving away too much, hopefully, but like you can maybe say that. But like overall it was very unwoke, and so was Top Gun, and they were both hits to some extent. I think Top Gun is a huge hit, and when you see those things are prominent, let's say Rings of Power, or what's the other thing that's, or the Little Mermaid remake. I'm not saying, and you know, I have no idea about the Little Mermaid remake. Maybe it's woke, maybe it's not. Just because of the just because of the casting, I don't know if it's necessarily woke. I'm not going to say that, but just this shift towards like, I'd say shifting out of the whole idea that we are having to do all this stuff for these movies, and like forcing the male character to die in the first 10 minutes, and like having like a empowered diverse female character, as Critical Drinker calls them, be the protagonist and the hero, the Mary Sue of the movie. I don't know if that's going to fly in 2 or 3 years. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case forever. I think people are getting burnt out on it, you know, and more people get burnt out on it. Economics things will happen, and you know, maybe we'll be back to ideally, you know, some of the better old days. But anyways, that's about all.